Hi everyone, Elsie Jensen here. Tonight we are going to make some pan-fried tilapia with homemade tartar sauce, some Cajun potato wedges, and a lemon garlic green beans, and some cheddar bay sourdough biscuits. So let's start by getting our potato wedges ready since they will need to cook the longest. I'm going to start by cutting my potatoes in half. And then we're doing like the old school, like cafeteria potato wedges today. I always do a variety of different home fries, but we're doing the old school one today. So we've got our good thick potato wedges. I put them in my big bowl here because that's how we're going to kind of season them up. I don't want them too thick because I do want them to cook up fairly quickly, but you do want them to have a little bit of meatiness to them. Let's get this guy. We'll slice it down. Then we're going to kind of dress them with some olive oil, flour, Tony Chachere's to kind of give them that nice Cajun flavor to it. A little kick as well, and then some onion powder and paprika. There we go. Get our next one in. And then we might only do 3. I always overestimate my potatoes. Just going to cut off this little brown edge. You know, I always say when you cut them up, they always make a lot more than you think. And we're kind of feeding a little bit less today because my oldest daughter is off taking a college class and my parents are leaving for Vienna soon. So my mom actually already left. She left for Germany first and then off to Vienna. So we've kind of got a low crew the next couple weeks. Okay, I think we'll be good with 3. It's a lot of potatoes here, and Evie does not like potatoes. So we're going to give them a little drizzle of olive oil. So you want enough to kind of coat them up, maybe about 2 tablespoons. They don't need to be completely drenched in them. And then we are going to add a little shake of onion powder. You're going to want about a tablespoon. That will give it a really nice savory flavor. We're going to do a little bit of garlic salt. About, I want to say, half a teaspoon. We want some paprika, which will give us a lovely kind of golden color to it. I want to say that's probably about a half a teaspoon. And then, right here. Got my Tony Chachere's. This is going to give me my Cajun. This is a bit spicy, so if you like a lot of spice, you can add a bit more. But if you're like me, just a pinch of spice, just a light shake over like a half a teaspoon to a teaspoon. And then we're going to add in about a tablespoon or so of flour. And this is going to help kind of stick all of those spices on and kind of cake like a little almost batter on our potato wedges here. And we're just going to really coat them in all of those seasonings and that oil until we've got all of those good flavors on them. And then we're going to line them out on our baking sheet that I've lined with parchment paper so that they can crisp up. So we've got them nice and coated. You can see how the seasonings are kind of pasted on the potatoes. And then we're going to put these in the oven at 400 because that is what my biscuits are going to be cooking at, and they kind of dictate what temperature we are. But we're going to kind of just stand them up just like this so that the skin side is facing down and there'll be lots of air to crisp around them. Now, if I weren't cooking biscuits today, I would probably cook these at a 425 on my air fryer setting or the convection bake setting. Okay, some of them are going to have to lay because they're not going to stand up nice for me. Here we go. You see your fingers kind of get really coated, but you want to make sure they're not touching other ones because you want to give them enough space for them to really cook up. And if they are touching on top of each other, they won't crisp up as nicely. So we've got all almost have them out, but it's kind of crazy to think like 3 potatoes make this many potato wedges. That's why I said I always tend to underestimate or overestimate how many potatoes I need. Okay. And then I'm going to give my hands a quick rinse. We're going to pop these in the oven. Okay. So again, we're going to have my oven preheated to 400 degrees. And I got all of them standing up as much as I could. And then we're going to pop these up. I'm going to put them on the top, but when it's time to bake our biscuits, I will move them down below. We have them going there, and they're going to need about 30 or so minutes. So they'll be the last thing done. They're the first thing in, but the last thing done on our menu tonight. Okay, let's get to making our sourdough discard cheddar bay biscuits. Get all my ingredients here. So we are going to start out with our sourdough discard. So I'm going to give it a good stir. It actually kind of rehabbed fairly nicely after our trip. So I need a half a cup of discard for this. And there we go. I'm hoping that tomorrow I can start making bread with it. I'm going to feed it after this. And I'm thinking it should be rehabbed enough from our long trip that it's got a good bubble on it. So we've got our half a cup of sourdough discard. Then we are going to add in 3/4 cup of milk. I'm using whole milk. And you're essentially going to kind of dilute your discard into the milk. And then I have a half a cup of melted butter. This is salted butter, and it's kind of come back to room temperature after melting it. I'll add this in here as well. Mix all of our our wet ingredients together before we add in our flour, because we don't want to over mix with our flour. Otherwise, we'll get a stiff biscuit. We are going to add in about a tablespoon and a half of, or a half a tablespoon of garlic salt. I'm going to need a little bit here. So you want 1.5 teaspoons. Now, if you don't have garlic salt, what you can do is a teaspoon of salt and 3/4 teaspoon of garlic powder to kind of get that same garlicky flavor. Let's use this one. I'm always got garlic salts that are down to the very end. And then so 1.5 teaspoons. And we will brush the tops with some garlic salt as well after, with a little butter and garlic herb on the top afterwards. But for now, just 1.5. And then we're going to use 1 teaspoon of baking soda and 1 teaspoon of baking powder for our kind of our base mix. This is going to be the leavening agent of it. That's going to cause our biscuits to rise. So 1 teaspoon of baking soda and 1 teaspoon of baking powder. Let's give this a nice mix, kind of get it going. And then we are going to add in our flour. I'm using my dough whisk, which works better once the flours are mixed in here. There we go. That will help give me a nice fluffy biscuit. So here's the base, our liquidy base. Now we're going to add in our flour. So I'm going to grab my flour. And we need 2 cups of flour. And you want to use all-purpose flour for this, not self-rising or bread flour. You want just the good old all-purpose. Bread flour has a higher gluten content, so it would give you more of a chewy biscuit. All-purpose is going to give you that nice crumbly, fluffy biscuit. And self-rising flour already has baking powder included in it, so then it would give you too much of a pop on your biscuit. So 2 cups of all-purpose flour. put this back over here because this is going to be for our breading of our fish in just a little bit. And then we're going to mix this until it's just barely combined. We'll still see some flour crumbs, and then we're going to add in 1 cup of cheddar cheese. But don't overmix because, again, that will lead to a stiffer biscuit, and we want a nice and fluffy biscuit. So I'm mixing it to just how I have it right here, where it's kind of got a loose floury crumb on it because you don't want it too mixed up before we shape it. That butter will come together and it will give you that nice thing. But again, if you overwork it, you're going to have a rock hard biscuit. Now we're going to add in about a cup of cheddar cheese, which is about like kind of 1 big handful, plus a little extra for safe. You could measure it out, but where's the fun? Okay, we're going to mix this up again, just barely incorporating that cheese in it. Want to make sure we don't over mix our biscuits. Here we go. Looks like it's nice and crumbly, but not too floury. And we're going to shape our biscuits. And these will bake in our oven at 400 for about 16 minutes. So we're going to shape these guys up. And I like to do kind of nice big biscuits, but I don't squeeze them too hard. I kind of ball them very gently and shape them. Think about like when you're making a snowball and you have that like really like fluffy snow that doesn't like to hold together, so you can't pack it too hard. That's kind of what you want to do here. I'm trying to make them all the same size. I think we're going to end up with about 8. I always like to do nice big biscuits because then you get this just like nice fluffy bit in the middle, not as much of the crunchy crust. But you could also make these much smaller. They would just probably bake up a little bit faster. So the bigger the biscuit, the longer it needs to cook. Here we go. And I think we got perfect to make our 8 like I thought. You know, I always try to like evenly parse them out, but there's always like one biscuit that ends up being like the gigantic biscuit. But these actually turned out fairly decent. I'm going to go wash my hands real quick. And we'll pop these off in the oven in a few minutes. I want to get our breading and stuff made so that our biscuits will come out nice and hot. Okay, let's start with our dredge for our fish. I'm going to move my clean cutting board up so I don't get it messy. So we've got 6 kind of big tilapia fillets here. And so I'm going to go with 2 cups of flour because I don't want to run out. So we've got my 2 cups of flour in here. And we're just doing a kind of a basic fish seasoning today, nothing super jazzy. We're going to use some onion powder. This is going to give our breading a nice savory flavor to it. So I'm going to just take this off. We're going to use about 2 tablespoons. Now, if you take these off, make sure you put them back on. I don't know, it was like a month or so ago. I took it off and then I accidentally shook my garlic salt into my shrimp ingots, and luckily we were able to save it. But remember to put it back on. And then we're going to add in about a tablespoon of paprika. This is going to give it a nice kind of golden color when we fry it up. And it has a really mild savory flavor, which will kind of play well with our regular Old Bay flavoring. I just say it's basic. We're going to use some Old Bay seasoning, which is really just like a seasoned salt, but everybody associates it with seafood. It just tastes good. We're going to use about, I want to say 2 tablespoons of it. I'm trying to make sure I get it all out. And this has a little bit of salt in it, but I do need to add a bit more salt because this is like the flavoring that's going to really hit our fish. and you want to make sure you have enough in it. I am going to be making a tartar sauce, which will give us a bit more things, but we kind of want to make sure we get that. Okay. Got this over here. And let's get a fork. We're going to mix this guy up. Okay. So when we mix this up, we want to make sure you get all of your seasonings kind of mixed all the way around so that you don't have any hiding in the little corner. My mom's dog is staying with us for a couple of days, and she likes to chase our cats. So if you see a crazy dog running around on the back, that's my mom's dog. She's a little crazy. Okay, we've got our flour dredged right here. And then we have our eggs, which we're going to whip up. We will be adding some panko breadcrumbs back into that to give our fish a bit more body. So this is going to be like your classic fried fish, not your beer battered fish, which has a little bit of a different mix the way you do it. So think of more southern fried versus like your British fried fish. We're going to mix these up. There we go. And you guys want to make sure your egg like mixed up so that you don't have any long stringy yolks or whites in it, because what happens, your fish, they'll like pull them up. So just make sure you've got it mixed up well. You don't need to get your beaters out or your whisk out, but you want to make sure all of the egg whites and the yolks have been broken up in together so you aren't picking up a big like snotty piece of egg white. Let's go pop our biscuits in, and then we can get ready to dredge up our fish. So we've got our sourdough cheddar bay biscuits. So these taste a lot like the biscuits that you get from Red Lobster, but they're homemade and they have sourdough discard in it. So we're going to put my little things, because we got to move our potato wedges that we have baking up in here. These are our Cajun seasoned potato wedges. And I'm just going to move them down. They'll go back up after our biscuits bake. And we have these at 400 degrees. And I'm going to set my timer for 16 minutes. I find that's like the perfect one. Looks like I lost. Here we go. Okay. Let's get this show on the road. I'm going to actually grab my cutting board, and I want to start up before we start doing this, getting my hands all dirty with the fish. I'm going to just slice up my onion real quick and have it start sauteing for our green beans. And I'm going to do kind of a lemon garlic green beans with them. I originally was thinking, oh, I'll do green beans in the oven, but then I realized I'm baking two things in the oven, and I have two ovens, but I rarely ever use this oven. It's more of my storage oven. I feel like most people use their oven as storage, so I have my second oven, which is my real oven, and then occasionally I'll whip this oven out at Christmas time when it's getting really crazy with baking. I'm going to do long, skinny slices because my green beans are long and skinny, and that way the onion kind of matches the green beans. So let's get these. I'm going to have them saute up in oil first and kind of get a nice little caramelization out of them, bring out their natural sweetness. I'm using a yellow onion. For sauteing onions, you want to stick with yellow or sweet onions or Valdalias. Wrong burner. You want to avoid red onions or white onions. They don't have the right flavor profile. Red onions are better eaten fresh, and white onions are really good in salsas and dip. They've got a nice pungent flavor to them. But these are perfect for sauteing. This is just your good old yellow onion. Okay, we're going to have those start to saute up. Okay, we're going to have those start to saute up. Here, and just give them a nice little coat on the olive oil. And then I have my burner over about a 6, so just like a medium high, but not too high, for them to kind of start to caramelize. onions can take a hot minute, so that's why I wanted to get them started. Okay, let's get this ready. I'm going to get my panko ready because after I dredge everything, then I'll add some more panko breadcrumbs to my mix. And I'm going to try, this is the rule of thumb, use one hand for your dredging. The other one is your clean hand. And trust me, once you do that, you'll think, it makes it much easier. Try not to go in with both. Here we go. So now we're putting our fish in our seasoned dredge. Now this is going to be, we season it up well because these spices are going to be the ones that stick on the most, this first layer. So you always want to season that up nicely. And this is going to allow that second layer to really stick because it will bind with the egg mixture that with the mixed up the beaten eggs and kind of form like a glue on our fish. Here we go. These are pretty big tilapia fillets. I will say Aldi's has some nice tilapia. You know, they don't have a big selection of, you know, like fresh fish and what's not, but their tilapia and salmon are pretty decent cuts. Okay, we've got this guy covered. And one last. You can do this. You could do this with cod, flounder, really any white fish, and this whole meal would work out great. You don't have to just use tilapia. Okay. Now we're going to add in our panko breadcrumbs. These are Italian seasoned. I find that the seasoned panko breadcrumbs just add a bit more flavor. They're not overly Italian in it, in that flavoring, but they add a nice little extra seasoning. Okay, we've got it mixed up.
You have a question. Is tilapia a favorite of the family?
Yes, I would say out of the white fish, I think they all favorite it the most. I think because it is a great introductory fish if if you're not a fish fan or you've never really eaten it, because it doesn't have it's not too fishy. It doesn't have a lot of like flavor. It takes on whatever you want. I'm going to add in my olive oil here. I don't need a whole lot, but I want enough to kind of cover the bottom of my pan with like a centimeter or so that it will cover up and fry over it. You could fry your fish in whatever oil you want. Olive oil doesn't have a burning point until 400 or so, and I'm going to keep it around 350 so I get a nice golden sear on it or fry on it. I'm going to have this, we're going to heat it up on high, and then we'll turn it down to about a medium when we actually get to it. So now we're going to start our little dredge, into the egg we go, and you see how that egg wash is like sticking onto that flour. And now we'll go back into our flour dredge that we added the panko breadcrumbs to, and I'm just going to pat this on. I always like to give it a firm push because I feel like it helps keep the breading on nice and thick. Here we go. And in. There we go. You could also cut your fish fillets into smaller strips if you wanted to, so you could have more of a smaller fish fillet if you wanted to. But I wasn't feeling like doing the extra work tonight, so we've got big fillets. Here we go. And coat it up. Now, we're down here in the South. We don't get very many, like the stores, they always carry, you know, tilapia, cod, and flounder, and catfish. So there's not very many options outside of that here, but occasionally we do get walleye or rainbow trout, and those are all good options too. There we go. When I was up in Voyagers National Park, we had a couple little small restaurants for lunchtime, and I've had to get the walleye sandwich every single time because I'm like, oh, we're at the lakes. I bet you they caught this right here on this lake or nearby. So I had to, of course, get it.
You have a question. Are there any oatmeal cookies left?
There are a few, not very many. I've got a little there. It was a huge hit. They were very excited. And then I had my niece and nephew over here, so they ate a couple of them as well. So they have almost disappeared. I don't think there'll be very many left tomorrow. They go fast in our house, pretty fast. And I hadn't made them in a while. I actually feel like I've made Aunt Aggie's a lot recently. And Torrin was like, well, we had Aunt Aggie's last night. And I was like, we did. He was like, I want a different cookie. And then he was like naming off. And then he was like, we decided on oatmeal because my chocolate chip cookies, all of them, I like my dough to chill. That gives me the best chewy cookie. Okay. Looks like we're going to have the perfect amount of egg wash. It does get a little messy here. But I know like people are like, oh, put it in a bag and shake it, but it just doesn't hold the breading on as well. I like to do the little firm push in here, and it coats it up nicely, and it allows it to really stick. There we go. Okay. Before I go wash my hands, this is why I keep one hand clean, to give my onions a little stir. And then I'm thinking my oil is getting just about right, so I'm going to turn it down just a little bit. And we're going to just I'm going to take a little bit of my mess with me. We'll come back and clean up the rest. And let me wash my hands. Gotta de-breadify my fingers. Okay. That is why you keep one hand clean. Okay. And then let me see. Grab a drop of water. Let's test our oil. Just a drop. Oh, just about. We're almost there. I'm going to turn it up. It's going to start snapping because that water's in there. It's almost hot. We wanted to get it to a nice, good. Once I see some of that water droplets I put in there sizzle a bit more, then I'll know that it's nice and hot and ready. You don't want to put your fish in cold oil or oil that's not hot enough, because then you're going to get a soggy fry on it. You want it to be nice and hot, and then turn it down to your temperature that you like it at, because once you put your fish in, the oil temperature is going to drop down. It's going to make it colder. So you want it a little bit hotter than what you're going to start your frying temperature off, and then kind of turn it down to maintain it. Okay, let's try one more drop. See if we've got that nice sizzle. There we go. See how we've got that popping now? We've got a good sizzle on it. I think I can do 3 fillets at a time. And I'm going to turn it down to about a 5 now that my fish is in. Fish cooks up pretty quickly, so you don't have to worry. If you have a thicker cut, it will cook up fairly quickly. With chicken, I always kind of fillet them in half to make sure that they're smaller and not as thick. We will flip these once through, but these are going to fry up nicely, about 2 to 3 minutes on each side. Okay, let's get our fish. Let me get my kind of table wipe down just a second here. Get my mess from my dredging. It's always a big mess, but we'll do a quick wipe down. And let's go. Bring some of these spices over here for our green beans and our tartar sauce.
You have a question. What oil do you use?
I use olive oil. I really like olive oil because I use it in almost all of my cooking. And it doesn't, I tend to fry my foods around 350. I think that gives you the perfect like golden brown. And olive oil's like burning point isn't closer until like 400, 450. So that's what I like. I like the flavor of it, but I feel like your oil is a personal preference. So you just got to decide which one you like the best. Okay, we got my onions right here. I'm going to add a little bit of garlic in. I want about a tablespoon because I want that flavor to come out for our green beans. I'll give this a nice little toss. I'm going to let them kind of saute up just a little bit, and then we're going to throw in our green beans. go. And you see how our onions kind of have this nice like caramelizing color on it, like this brownish color on it. Once they're all completely brown, then I'll throw in my green beans. I still have some that are white and not quite translucent. If they're white, that means they're not cooked through and they're going to have more of that pungent onion flavor. Once you get to that golden brown, that's when you're going to get that sweet caramelized onion flavor to it. Okay, let's make our tartar sauce. Okay, we're going to start out with some mayo. And then I'm going to grab my butter as well and get my butter melting to brush over our biscuits. I'll just have that in there ready to go. And put it on very low back there. Okay, we're going to add about a half a cup of mayo in here, maybe a little bit more. Kind of eyeball it. That's probably 2/3 cup of mayo. Homemade tartar sauce, guys, is the bomb. It's so much better than store-bought. Store-bought, I always feel like is very chemically. We're going to use red onion. Remember how I said red onions are really good for things that are raw or in like a dip or sauce? You want to use red onions for this. You could substitute out a green onion or a shallot, but shallot would probably be better than a green onion, but that would give you that same flavor.
You have a question. Where'd you learn how to cook?
You know what? Just years of practice. I started when I was 13. I started taking over cooking one meal a night in my house growing up. And then I slowly took over more and more meals to where I was cooking like every single meal. And I loved it. And it was like the best paying job, like a chore at our house. So I got to decide what was free to eat and I got paid to make it. So it was kind of a win-win. We've got our red onions minced up. But you know what? Like I watched a lot of shows and I read a lot of cooking magazines and I read some books. But you know, it's just practice. I'm a way better cook than I was 25 or so years ago, 24 years ago. I'm not that old. There we go. Now we've got our onions are mostly all nice and caramelized. We have a few that are translucent, but I'm going to throw in my green beans.
What was your favorite cooking show growing up?
I really loved Hell's Kitchen when it first came out, and I loved Rachel Ray's show that really dates me. But those were kind of my favorite. I like Top Chef and Master Chef as well, and I really loved Master Chef Junior when it came out. In Hell's Kitchen Junior, I think that was called. Those I thought were really cool. But those are my favorite.
Two-parter. Did you ever work as a chef? And how often do you sharpen your knives?
I never worked as a chef, so all my things just home. I sharpen my knives, I would say once or twice a month, but I just do it when it's needed. So if I feel them catching my know when I need to sharpen them is when they are caught on onions, peppers, or tomatoes. If I feel them snag, that's when I know I need to sharpen them. And I just use a good old-fashioned honing steel and sharpen them up that way. Don't need this big of a baking tray, but it was the one on top. We're going to put our paper towels on there, but let it dry. But we have this nice golden fry on it, which is perfect. My biscuits are calling my name, so we're going to go grab those. I'm going to turn these down a smidge, making sure we're all good. Okay. Let me grab I'm going to turn that off before it beeps. Look at our gorgeous Cheddar Bay biscuits here. Aren't they beautiful? I'm going to pop my potato wedges up. I'm going to let them cook a little bit longer. So these are my Cheddar Bay biscuits made with my sourdough discard. And they are nice and big and puffy. You can see the cheese just bubbling out at the top here. They taste a lot like Red Lobster's ones. We're going to put a little garlic butter on them in just a second too, or herby butter. Got that melting right here. So to make that little butter to go on top of our biscuits, we are going to use a little bit of garlic salt. So about a teaspoon. And then where is my parsley? A little bit of parsley adds really no flavor, but it's going to give you that green speck that you see. So we're going to put about a teaspoon or so in there. And we're going to let that melt up. I'm going to get once it's all melted, we'll brush over the tops of it. Go right back. Oh, wrong one. I always got to make sure I grab the right burner. Okay, so let that melt up. Let me get my paper towels ready for my fish. So I always take my fish out and I rest them on paper towels just like you would with bacon. It will soak up any extra grease and keeps them nice and crispy. If you just lay them on a flat surface, they're going to get soggy on the bottom half. So we're going to turn this down a smidge. Ooh, lost one. So my green beans are about halfway done. And the way you can tell, this one is undercooked. You see how it's very white? That means it's still going to be firm and crunchy and have that raw flavor to it. Now we see this green over bean right here is starting to get more green, a dark, vibrant green on it. That's going to let you know that it is more cooked. It has a tender crisp. I'm looking for a dark but vibrant green, but don't cook it so much that it turns brown, like a brownish green. You still want that dark, vibrant green. That's going to give you the tender, but has still a good crunch to it, but not like your snap, but a tender crisp, I like to say. Okay, let's get back to our tartar sauce. I've got my minced up red onion, and then you need a pickle. I've got one pickle left in here. My Evie is going to eat it. I told her the other day, leave me a pickle. I need a pickle for my tartar sauce. She left me two, so she can finally have her other pickle. I like to do a nice zesty pickle, not a sweet pickle, for my tartar sauce because I want the salty flavor, that zesty flavor. You're going to mince it up into nice little, like almost the size of garlic mincing. You don't want the pickle chunks too big. And you could use pickle chips, baby pickles, any one. You're just going to mince it up nice and small. I'll do one more chop over. There we go. We're going to add, this is about a tablespoon of pickle chopped up. I'm going to add that in there. And then I'm going to check on my fish here because I think my fish is about ready to transfer out. I'm going to use my fish spatula. This is a long, skinny spatula, which is perfect for sliding right under your fish. And this has got a perfect golden color. You can kind of see underneath it. I'll flip it a little bit. See? But I always like to put the grease side down. That's going to leave my fish nice and crispy. If you put the grease side up, there's more grease there and your fish will get soggy. There we go. So we've got our first 3 tilapia fillets here. Now I'm going to add in my second batch to fry up. But you see they've got that perfect kind of southern fry on it. So it's not a English fish and chips, but more of a southern fry. Got your fish fry going on. Okay. This is looking pretty close to it. Okay, my butter in the back right here is nice and melted. Got my herbs here. And now you're just going to take this herby butter and you're just going to brush it over the top of each of our biscuits. And this is what really gives you that Cheddar Bay feeling, like we're at Red Lobster here. Pretend you got the fried fish platter tonight. Here we go. For a fraction of the cost. There we go. A nice little dabble over it. And this, I said, you can't, if you don't do this, your biscuits are missing something. This is just a little extra you have to do. And it makes it so delicious. Okay.
You ever request to go over the breading?
The breading, yes, that is super simple. It was flour, onion powder, paprika, Old Bay, seasoning, a little bit of garlic salt, and then you kind of mix all of those together, and you dredge it up. And then once you do your egg wash, you add in about a cup of panko breadcrumbs. We will upload this video to the link on our page, so that full recipe will be in there for the first time we went through it. So if you want to recreate it, you can definitely go there. I think all of our videos also have transcription on it that makes it a little bit easier. Okay, I'm going to turn my green beans off because they are just about perfect. And we're going to finish up our tartar sauce, and we will be about ready to serve up dinner. Okay, and we'll have our potato wedges coming out of the oven. Those, I told you, are our longest in there. We're going to put in about a teaspoon of dill. If you're using fresh dill, you'll probably want like a teaspoon and a half, a little bit more. But dried dill does the job here. And then we've got our lemon. We want to squeeze half a juice of lemon over it. There we go. And then we're going to add a little bit of garlic salt, not much because mayo's already pretty salty. And if you want to, you could add pepper if you like a little bit more of a zing, but I like mine kind of basic here. And this is all you need for a delicious homemade tartar sauce. And it is amazing, guys. Can't have fried fish without this. Okay, I'm going to take my other bit of my lemon juice, because remember, these are my lemon garlic green beans. I'm going to squeeze a little bit of my lemon juice over this. We'll give it a nice sprinkle of garlic salt. And those will have that kind of tangy, but still got that garlic savory flavor to it, which will be delicious. I've got my heat turned off too. There we go. Let's check on our fish right here, see if they need flipping, and then we'll go grab our potato wedges out of the oven. There we go. I always say the method of you put your spatula underneath and your tongs to help guide the flip. Otherwise, you can have a big splash of grease, and we don't want that. Okay, look at them, nice golden crisp on them. Let's go grab our potato wedges because dinner is almost ready. Okay. I'll grab myself a trivet. Here we've got our gorgeous potato wedges, and we used a little bit of Cajun seasoning on these, so they've got a little bit of a zing, but you know, we're spice babies here, so I keep it fairly mild. But they have paprika, onion powder, a little bit of Tony Chachere's, and a little bit of garlic salt, flour, and olive oil. And super simple, but here's your kind of classic potato wedge for it, which will just go great with tonight's dinner. Okay, well, let me grab a plate and I can serve up dinner. Okay, let's see. We'll grab these while we're over here. Let me put my tartar sauce over here. So we've got it going. We're going to start with our lemon garlic green beans that we caramelized onion, added some garlic, and then a little bit of garlic. We have our cheddar bay biscuit. Look at that golden brown on the bottom with our homemade cheddar bay biscuits with sourdough discard. Our lovely fried tilapia. And then we're going to grab a couple potato wedges. These are our Cajun potato wedges. And then, of course, can't miss the big serving of tartar sauce. And if it was me, I would probably add 3 more scoops of tartar sauce on top because I love tartar sauce. Well, guys, thank you so much for joining us here today. Don't forget to like and subscribe. I try to do live cooking shows every single day, show you what we're making for our family, and hopefully teach you guys something along the way. Again, we do upload all of our videos to the link on our page. So if you ever want to recreate any of these recipes at home, you can just search for what we cook for. So fried tilapia and potato wedges, and you can cook along with me again at home. We also have a link to our Amazon storefront, which has all of our cooking gadgets that we pretty much use in our kitchen. I've got my baking sheets in there. I've got my hex clad pans, all of the different utensils and gadgets I use to cook all my meals. Well, guys, thank you guys for joining us here today. Don't forget to like and subscribe.